So let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like you're an imposter when it comes to trying to lose weight? Have you ever found yourself self-sabotaging yourself when you're trying to lose weight? Maybe you have a good day, a good week, a good month, and then suddenly for no explainable reason, you find yourself going back into old habits. If you find yourself doing that, then in today's video podcast, I want to share with you how you can reduce imposter syndrome and also reduce self-sabotage. Hi and welcome, my name is Eric Simpson. I'm an online weight loss specialist for busy professional women over 40 who are looking to drop at least 20 pounds and really transform their health and well-being. And if you'd like some additional training on this whole topic, there'll be a link below this video where you can go to my free online masterclass where I share 3 case studies of women who are probably just similar to you, who are trying to lose weight, who are struggling with weight loss, who struggled with imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, and were able to overcome that by getting through 3 specific challenges that I share in that masterclass. But for today, I'm going to focus on how to reduce imposter syndrome. I'm going to start off by just reading a definition off my screen so you get an idea of what imposter syndrome is if you don't already know what the definition is. So let me kick off with, so imposter syndrome is a psychological occurrence in which an individual doubts their skills, talents or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. So I just want to pick up on a couple of things there. Their accomplishments, so and skills as well. So your skills, I'm pretty sure, if you're like many of the people I've worked with, many of the women I've worked with, you probably already know how to prepare good, healthy meals. You probably have a good appreciation of how to exercise. And you've probably had some success in the past as well, I'm guessing, but you've not acknowledged that success. And that's quite commonplace for people, to be successful, but not to acknowledge that success. So that's the first thing I want to pick out of the definition of imposter syndrome. Let's go on to the next slide and see what that says. So, despite external evidence of their competence, those experiencing this phenomenon do not believe they deserve their success or luck, which is interesting. And depending on how you achieve your weight loss, that may be stronger in some people than others. For example, I know from doing my research into this topic, people who have, for example, gastric bypasses or any sort of medical procedure, or maybe do an extreme diet where they're living on shakes for a long time, or doing an extremely hard exercise program and not eating particularly well, practically starving themselves, they may not quite feel like they've accomplished that success legitimately, especially those people who have had some sort of medical intervention. So I think that's quite an interesting one as well. Let's continue with the description. They may incorrectly attribute it to what they call the Matthew effect, which is basically the rich get poorer, the poor get poorer. So in your case, it might be something like, my family's always been overweight, I've always been overweight, a lot of my friends are overweight, therefore it stands to reason that I should also be overweight as well. That's the Matthew effect. So, or they may think that they are deceiving others because they feel as if they are not as intelligent, or they are outwardly portraying themselves to be. So what does that mean? Well, that's not really specific to weight loss necessarily. That's more to do with the function of your intellectual capacity. And again, it's not something that's uncommon with women, where they are in a role where they're doing particularly well, but for some reason they don't feel as though they warrant the accolades that they may be getting. And you may have found yourself in that position yourself. Let's continue with the description. Imposter syndrome can stem from and result in strained personal relationships and can hinder individuals from achieving their full potential in their field of interest. So, imposter syndrome can stem from and result in strained personal relationships and can hinder individuals from achieving their full potential in their fields of interest. So, in this particular case, it's your interest in weight loss, which can be massively hindered if you have this imposter syndrome, which we're going to talk about how you can overcome it, and indeed self-talk as well. And the last part of the description then is, when imposter syndrome was first conceptualized, it was viewed as a phenomenon that was common among high-achieving females. However, further research showed that it affects both males and females equally. And that's interesting because I think when it was first conceptualized, that has somehow stuck with the female population, that it's something that mainly women are afflicted with mentally, but it actually affects men as well. So that's the one of the definitions of imposter syndrome. Now let me just read off some of the names of people who you might not think would suffer with imposter syndrome, because sometimes we think it's just us that are struggling with this and nobody else is struggling with it, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But there are some very famous people who have struggled with this as well. So let me just read off some of these names. So, famous actors: Tom Hanks, Jodie Foster, Meryl Streep. I think she's won an Oscar at least once. Denzel Washington, I'm pretty sure, is an Oscar winner. Tina Fey, Emma Watson from the Harry Potter movies, Maya Angelou, author of probably, I think, about 10 or 11 books. All of those people have stated publicly that they struggle with imposter syndrome. Despite having a wealth of success, they still find it difficult to believe that they are worthy of what people are saying they're really great at. So I just share that with you because I think it's important you understand you're not alone with this. We all have this sense of imposter syndrome from time to time. I have certainly had it myself. You know, putting together sometimes my videos, when I put out videos like this, you know, sometimes I think, well, who am I to be talking about these particular topics and sharing advice? Despite a huge amount of success I've had helping people to lose weight and employing other trainers, training them on my system where they've got great results with clients, I still from time to time have self-doubt and wonder, well, am I really putting out information that's valuable for people? Am I wasting my time? Am I wasting other people's time putting this information out? Will people take me seriously? So we all do struggle with this imposter syndrome. And one of the things that we do quite commonly as human beings is we often judge other people and look at them from the outside and look at the success they've had, and we judge their success as being, well, they've got it all together. We don't for 1 second even conceive sometimes that they have internal demons going on just like we do. What we tend to do is compare their outside success and we measure that against our internal self-doubt, our imposter syndrome, which then gets supported by negative self-talk. And it's an unfair comparison. And it's unfair because the people who are successful on the outside would have had to get over a lot of imposter syndrome and negative self-talk. You know, I've just given you a list of famous people there who have had to battle with this. So we are in good company. Now, there's a famous philosopher from the 1800s. His name was Michel de Montaigne. I believe that's the right way of pronouncing it. And he spoke about, and I'm going to get a little bit sort of graphic here, but his philosophy was this, and forgive the language just for purpose of quoting what he said, and I'll read it off the screen. Kings and philosophers shit, and so do ladies. So a little bit graphic, a little bit crude, apologies for the obscenity, but what he's basically saying is, look, we are all the same, you know, we all have the same internal fears, doubt, and all of that stuff's going on for all of us. So it's just a question of how do you reduce that imposter syndrome. I'm going to be sharing some of that with you in a moment. And let me share the first thing that you can do to help reduce that imposter syndrome. And believe it or not, is to have conversations with other people. People that you know, like and trust, people that you feel comfortable discussing this sort of stuff with. And when you do that, you'd be surprised at how other people can then reciprocate with their own struggles with imposter syndrome and negative self-talk. And by bringing it out into the open, you suddenly realize that actually I'm not that bad at all, really. Other people have these same issues. So I'm not weird, I'm not crazy, and I'm not unique either. Now, I know we all like to think we're unique and we're all special, and we are in our own right. But in terms of these challenges, imposter syndrome and negative self-talk, it's universal. The question is, how do you manage that imposter syndrome and how do you reduce the self-talk. And I say I'm going to give you some practical steps in a moment on top of what I've just said, which is, talking about it with a good friend or a coach, hey, someone like me possibly, where I'm used to having these conversations with people, and to me it's no big deal. It's what I expect people to be struggling with. It's what my program is designed to do. And again, I'll just mention again, the link below this video, the free training masterclass of the 3 ladies who I work with. Sue, who took off 71 pounds, imposter syndrome, negative self-talk. Marie took off 51 pounds. Not only did she have negative self-talk and imposter syndrome, she was at a point of going into in fact, when she contacted me prior to working with me, she rang me. I didn't know this at the time, but she rang me from a hospital car park, a private hospital car park, where she was about to go in to have a consultation for a medical procedure. That's where she was at. And she was also struggling with mental depression as well. So she wasn't coming from a great place. And the other lady I talk about in that masterclass, I say the links below, a lady called Gaynor, who at the time was probably easily 5 stone overweight, wanted to lose 5 stone. And in addition to that, she had a business she was running, employing over 80 staff. She had over 80 staff, probably a dozen or more suppliers into her business she was dealing with. If you've ever run your own business, it's hard work. On top of that, she was planning on selling a business in like 5 or 10 years, so that was going in the background. And suddenly that was accelerated, and she was told that a company wanted to buy a business within sort of 6 to 7 months. Therefore, she had to then start preparing a business for sale. So running a business, managing staff and all the things that go with that, and trying to get it ready for sale. And then on top of that, she had an ill mum who was she thought she was going to lose her mum. Her dad that wasn't great mentally, also supporting one of her daughters through university. And here she is trying to lose weight. Now, most people would say, look, don't even bother. Wait until you've cleared all this stuff out of the way, then maybe think about weight loss. But right now you've got too much on your plate. But you know what? She went ahead and she lost 85 pounds. So again, if you want to hear how they did that and the challenges that they overcame, then just click the link below this video to register for that free masterclass. I think you'll find it helpful. So as well as having a conversation with other people, I think the biggest conversation you can have is the conversation with yourself. And when I'm working with clients, one of the first things I work with them on is self-talk, because the thing that separates those people that become successful in any endeavor in life, whether it's weight loss, careers, relationships, doesn't matter what it is, the thing that I think separates them is how they speak to themselves in their own heads. Because you can have all the knowledge, you can have all the facilities, the resources, the time, everything can be in your favor. But if you're not able to manage your own thinking and how you speak to yourself, then it really counts for nothing. Yet other people who are in a far, on paper, worse position, but have got this working for them, like the ladies I mentioned, Marie, Gaynor, and Sue, once they got that working for them, boom, success happened. Now, I'm not sat here saying it was easy for them. I'm not saying they didn't have imposter syndrome. I'm not saying they didn't struggle. I'm not saying they didn't have relapses. They had all of that going on. But for the vast majority of the time, they were able to manage their own thinking. So having that conversation with yourself and somehow being able to quieten that voice in your head, more often than not, is going to keep you in good stead. It's going to keep you on track. Because if that voice in your head becomes a dominating conversation, that's the direction of travel you will go in. And if you already have imposter syndrome and then you back that up with negative self-talk, then guess what? That becomes your reality. So what we're looking to do is say, okay, fine, let's accept the fact I have got imposter syndrome and I have it sometimes. But let me quieten down that negative self-talk so I at least give myself a chance to overcome this imposter syndrome. And maybe 60% of the time, I believe I can do it. And then the other 40% of the time, maybe I think I'm not that good. But at least you've got a trend towards doing the right things more often than not, and that will get you the success you're looking for. So how do you go about building some steps in terms of reducing that imposter syndrome and improving your self-talk on top of what I've just been saying? Well, there are 3 questions you could ask yourself when you get started with weight loss. And if you've been going for some time now and you have made some start, then here's a question you could ask yourself. Are you doing better than you were? Now, let's just say you only started this morning and you're watching this play in the evening. I would say, okay, are you doing better than what you did yesterday evening? And the answer is going to be yes, because you're actually listening to something that's going to move you forwards. If you've been doing something for a few weeks or a few months and doing it consistently, are you better than you were then? And if the answer is yes, great, you've moved forward. So that's a great question to ask yourself when you don't necessarily see the weight coming off the scales per se, but you are doing other things that are helping. So let's say, for example, you haven't quite got your eating right, but you are, let's say, walking more. Well, that's great. That's an improvement. You're doing better than what you were doing before if you weren't walking. So that's an improvement. So that's one question you can ask yourself. Another question you could ask yourself is, are you healthier than you were? So if you've been doing this for a week or two, do you feel more healthy than what you felt 2-3 weeks ago? Great question to ask yourself. And if you haven't yet started yet, this is a question you can put in your back pocket, and you can ask yourself this question quite literally after one day. Because if you've done one day of good activity, guess what? You are maybe not physically that much healthier. Let's say you've got high blood pressure, chances are you're not going to change it in a day, but mentally, psychologically, you are healthier than what you were the day before. Why? Because you've got one day under your belt. Then the third obvious question to ask yourself, I say it's obvious, would be, are you lighter than what you were? And even after a week, I say to my clients, aim to lose between 1.25 and 1.75 pounds per week is what I recommend they try and aim for. And if you're a pound and a quarter heavier, lighter a week later, if you're just a few ounces lighter, that is success, and that's something to build on. And often people don't get this, and they don't build on the small wins. They're constantly looking for the big wins, and nobody ever gets big wins overnight. It takes one step at a time, one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time. And when you adopt that sort of mindset, but you also recognize the success you're having, that's going to build your confidence. That's going to help to improve your self-talk, which in turn is going to help to reduce that imposter syndrome, especially when you recognize the successes you've had. Bearing in mind that all of us, and I mentioned those famous people before, bearing in mind that all of us, no matter how successful we are, we can still suffer with imposter syndrome. So I'm not sat here saying that you are going to completely get rid of imposter syndrome. That would be not true, but we can certainly reduce the impact it has on us on a day-to-day basis. And the final thing I want to say in this video podcast for today is, accept you're not perfect. Nobody is, and nobody's perfect. And recognize your wins as often as you can, because you are winning when you get started on a weight loss program. The mere fact that you've started and you've completed one day or a week or a month, it's a win, and you need to recognize that, because if you don't recognize it and you just forget about it, you will always go back to that old imposter syndrome, and you'll always have the negative self-talk supporting that imposter syndrome, which is what you really don't want. So hopefully that's given you some ideas about imposter syndrome. Hopefully it's made you realize that you're not alone, that we all struggle with this. Hopefully you realize now that there is a way forward for this. And again, if you want to hear how 3 ladies were able to overcome this imposter syndrome and negative self-talk, click the link below, and I invite you to sign up and watch that free masterclass. If nothing else, it may just give you some inspiration based on what they have done for you to realize that the situation you're in, I'm pretty confident you can overcome it and achieve the success that you're looking for. So until next time, take very good care, and bye for now.